The diamond bracelet glittered in the store window, mocking me with its extravagance. I could feel Marcus's eyes boring into the side of my head, his excitement palpable. My stomach churned. "Isn't it perfect, Belinda?" Marcus gushed, pressing his face against the glass like a child eyeing candy. "Mom will absolutely love it." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's beautiful, but Marcus, we can't afford." "Nonsense." He waved his hand dismissively. "It's Mom's 70th birthday. We have to make it special." I bit my lip, my mind racing through our mounting bills, the leaky roof, and the stack of unpaid credit card statements hidden in my desk drawer. "Honey, $3,000 is a lot of money right now. Maybe we could find something more reasonable?" Marcus's face darkened, his jovial mood evaporating instantly. "Are you saying my mother isn't worth it?" "That's not what I meant, and you know it," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I'm saying we have responsibilities, Marcus. Bills to pay, a house to maintain, and family to take care of," he interrupted, his voice rising. Passers-by glanced our way, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Mom has always been there for us. The least we can do is show her how much we appreciate her. I wanted to scream, to shake him and make him understand the precarious financial tightrope we were walking. Instead, I took a deep breath and tried a different approach. "Marcus, sweetie, I know you want to do something special for your mom, but what if we planned a nice dinner instead? Something intimate, with all her favorite foods?" He scoffed, shaking his head. "A dinner? That's your big idea? God, Belinda, sometimes I wonder if you have any heart at all." His words stung, and I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "That's not fair," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You know what's not fair?" Marcus growled, turning to face me fully. "Working my ass off every day only to come home to a wife who doesn't support me or my family." I recoiled, as if he'd slapped me. "How dare you? I've been holding us together for months while you bounce from job to job, making grand promises you can't keep." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. Marcus's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. "Is that what you think of me?" he hissed. "That I'm some kind of failure?" "Marcus, I didn't mean—" "Save it," he spat, turning on his heel and storming into the jewelry store. My heart raced as I watched him approach the counter, gesturing animatedly at the bracelet in the window. This couldn't be happening. We were already drowning in debt, and here he was, about to add another $3,000 to the pile. I rushed into the store, my palms sweating. "Marcus, please, let's talk about this." He ignored me, smiling charmingly at the saleswoman. "We'll take it," he announced proudly. The saleswoman beamed, reaching for the bracelet. "Excellent choice, sir. Your wife will love it." "Oh, it's not for my wife," Marcus corrected her, shooting me a pointed look. "It's for my mother, someone who actually appreciates me." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Tears threatened to spill over as I watched Marcus hand over our credit card, sealing our financial fate with a flourish of his signature. As we left the store, Marcus clutched the small, elegant bag triumphantly. "See? Was that so hard?" I couldn't speak, my throat tight with unshed tears and simmering anger. How had we gotten here? When had my loving, supportive husband turned into this selfish stranger? As we approached our car, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and grinned. "It's Mom. She wants us to come over right away. Says she has a surprise for us." I closed my eyes, willing the ground to swallow me whole. What fresh hell awaited us at Edna's house? And how much more could our fragile marriage take before it shattered completely? The memory hit me like a freight train as we pulled into Edna's driveway. Suddenly I was back at Chez Pierre, that overpriced French restaurant, watching helplessly as Marcus ordered another bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," he'd toasted, clinking glasses with his rowdy college friends. I'd smiled tightly, my stomach in knots. We couldn't afford this extravagance, not with Marcus between jobs, again. As the night wore on, the bill grew astronomical. When it finally arrived, Marcus leaned in close, his breath reeking of expensive wine. "Honey, I seem to have forgotten my wallet. You've got this, right?" My cheeks burned as I fumbled for my credit card, praying it wouldn't be declined. That night had cost us nearly 2 months' rent. Now, staring at Edna's perfectly manicured lawn, I felt that same sickening dread. What surprise could she possibly have in store? "Come on, Belinda," Marcus urged, already halfway up the path. "Don't keep Mom waiting." I trudged behind him, clutching my purse like a shield. The front door swung open before we could knock, revealing Edna in all her carefully curated glory. "My darlings," she cooed, enveloping Marcus in a perfumed embrace. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she turned to me. "Belinda, dear, you look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" "I'm fine, Edna," I replied, forcing a smile. "What's this surprise you mentioned?" Edna's face lit up. "Oh, you're going to love this! Come, come!" She ushered us into the living room, where an elderly man sat perched on her floral sofa. He stood as we entered, revealing an impressively tall, lean frame. "Marcus, Belinda," Edna announced, practically vibrating with excitement. "I'd like you to meet Charles, my fiancé." The world tilted on its axis. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself, certain I'd misheard. "Your fiancé?" Marcus sputtered, his face a mask of confusion. Charles stepped forward, extending a weathered hand. "Pleasure to meet you both. Edna's told me so much about you." I shook his hand numbly, my mind reeling. Edna was getting married? At her age? And why hadn't she mentioned this before? "Mom," Marcus said slowly, "when did this happen?" Edna waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, Charles and I have known each other for ages. We reconnected at my bridge club a few months ago, and well..." She giggled girlishly. "When you know, you know." I caught Marcus's eye, silently pleading for some sanity in this surreal moment. But he just grinned, pulling his mother into another hug. "That's wonderful, Mom. I'm so happy for you." My heart sank. Of course he was thrilled. This was just another excuse for celebration, another reason to spend money we didn't have. "We're thinking a June wedding," Edna continued, her eyes sparkling. "Nothing too extravagant, of course, just close family and friends at the country club." I nearly choked. The country club? The same one that had rejected our membership application due to financial considerations? "That sounds lovely," I managed, my voice strained. "But Edna, are you sure this isn't a bit rushed?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Edna's smile tightened, and Charles shifted uncomfortably. "Rushed?" Edna repeated, her tone dangerously sweet. "My dear, at my age, every moment is precious. Why wait?" Marcus shot me a warning glance. "What Belinda means is, we want to make sure you have time to plan the perfect day." Edna's expression softened slightly. "Oh, that's all taken care of. In fact..." She paused dramatically. "We were hoping you two might help with some of the arrangements, and perhaps contribute to the festivities." There it was, the other shoe dropping with a resounding thud. "Of course," Marcus exclaimed before I could open my mouth. "Anything for you, Mom. Right, Belinda?" I felt trapped, cornered by their expectant gazes. How could I explain that we were drowning in debt? That every extra penny went towards keeping our own heads above water? "We'd be happy to help," I heard myself say, the words tasting like ash. "Just let us know what you need." Edna clapped her hands in delight. "Wonderful! Oh, this is going to be such fun!" As she launched into a detailed description of her dream wedding, I caught a glimpse of Charles. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Uncertainty? Whatever it was, it vanished as quickly as it appeared, but it left me with a gnawing suspicion that there was more to this surprise engagement than met the eye. The moving truck rumbled away, leaving Edna's mountain of luggage piled in our driveway. I stared at the mess, my heart sinking. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. "Isn't this wonderful?" Marcus beamed, hefting a floral suitcase. "Mom living with us, just like old times." I forced a smile, bile rising in my throat. "Wonderful," I echoed, my voice hollow. Edna tottered up the path, leaning heavily on her cane. "Oh, Belinda dear, be a lamb and fetch my toiletries bag. It's the Louis Vuitton one." Of course it was. I bit back a retort and dutifully retrieved the designer bag, its price tag mocking me with every step. Once inside, Edna settled into our best armchair like a queen on her throne. "Now, about my room. We've set up the guest room for you, Mom," Marcus said. "It's got a lovely view of the garden." Edna's lips pursed. "The guest room? But darling, I was hoping for something larger. Perhaps the master bedroom?" I nearly dropped the bag I was holding. "Our bedroom?" "Well, you two are younger," Edna reasoned. "You can manage the stairs better than I can." Before I could protest, Marcus jumped in. "Of course, Mom. Whatever makes you comfortable. We'll move our things right away." I gaped at him, disbelief warring with fury, but Edna was already moving on, her voice syrupy sweet. "Belinda, while the boys handle the heavy lifting, perhaps you could whip up a little something? I'm famished after all this excitement." Gritting my teeth, I retreated to the kitchen. As I aggressively chopped vegetables for a salad, I could hear Edna directing Marcus on furniture placement upstairs. Our furniture. In her new room. Hours later, exhausted and aching, I collapsed onto our new bed in the guest room. Marcus flopped down beside me, grinning like a fool. "Isn't this great? Mom seems so happy already." I turned to face him, struggling to keep my voice level. "Marcus, we need to talk about this. How long is she planning to stay?" He shrugged. "As long as she needs to, I guess. The doctor said her blood pressure's been acting up." "And what about her house? Her fiancé?" Marcus's brow furrowed. "Charles? Oh, that fell through. Turns out he was only after her money or something. Can you believe it?" I could, actually, but I held my tongue, focusing on the more pressing issue. "So she's here indefinitely? Marcus, we can't afford." "Don't start, Belinda," he cut me off, his tone sharp. "She's family. We take care of family." The next morning, I woke to find Edna already ensconced in the kitchen, rifling through our cabinets. "Good heavens," she tutted. "Don't you have any proper tea? This simply won't do." Before I could respond, she thrust a piece of paper into my hands. "Be a dear, and pick up a few things for me, won't you?" "Nothing fancy, just the essentials." I scanned the list, my eyes widening at each outrageous item. Imported caviar? Truffle oil? "Edna, these aren't essentials. They're luxury items. We can't." "Oh, pish-posh," she waved dismissively. "I'll reimburse you, of course. Now hurry along. I've got a busy day ahead." Curious despite myself, I asked, "Busy with what?" Edna's eyes gleamed. "Well, if you must know, I've joined the most delightful club, the Golden Oaks Society. We're having our first meeting here this afternoon." My stomach dropped. "Here? Today?" She nodded, oblivious to my distress. "Just a small gathering, 10 or 12 ladies. You don't mind handling the refreshments, do you? Nothing too elaborate, some finger sandwiches, petit fours, that sort of thing." I stared at her, speechless. This woman had commandeered our bedroom, was sending me on errands for overpriced groceries, and now expected me to cater a party for her new social club? "Oh, and one more thing," Edna added, her voice suddenly hesitant. "I hate to ask, but, well, the club has dues. Rather steep ones, I'm afraid. I was hoping you might be able to help out just this once." The final straw. I opened my mouth, ready to unleash years of pent-up frustration. But at that moment, Marcus appeared, yawning and stretching. "Morning, ladies," he mumbled. "What's for breakfast?" Edna beamed at him. "Your wonderful wife was just offering to make us something special. Weren't you, Belinda?" I met her gaze, seeing the challenge there. The ball was in my court. I could expose her manipulations, risk my marriage, and shatter this fragile peace. Or I could swallow my pride again and play along. What would it be? The truth, or another lie to add to the growing pile? I stared at the check in my hand, my vision blurring with unshed tears. $5,000. It might as well have been $5 million for all the difference it would make to our dwindling savings. "Belinda, darling," Edna's voice dripped with honey-coated venom. "You're not having second thoughts, are you? After all, it's for such a good cause." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "Of course not, Edna. I'm happy to help your friend." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but what choice did I have? For weeks now, Edna had been weaving this tale of woe about her dear friend Mildred, supposedly on the brink of losing her home. Each day brought a new, heart-wrenching detail designed to chip away at my resolve. "Oh, bless you," Edna cooed, snatching the check from my trembling fingers. "Mildred will be so grateful. You know, she hasn't eaten a proper meal in days." I nodded numbly, already calculating which bills would have to go unpaid this month. As Edna tottered off, no doubt to deposit the check immediately, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. "Everything okay, hon?" Marcus appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. For a moment, I considered telling him everything. The mounting debt, the constant drain on our resources, the gnawing suspicion that his mother wasn't being entirely truthful. But then I remembered the way he'd looked at me when I'd questioned Edna's move-in, the disappointment in his eyes. "Fine," I lied, mustering a weak smile. "Just a bit tired." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, don't work too hard. Mom mentioned something about needing help with her club meeting later." "Of course she did." I bit back a sigh as Marcus disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the ever-growing weight of our financial troubles. Hours later, as I arranged delicate finger sandwiches on Edna's prized silver platter, a commotion at the front door caught my attention. "Edna, darling," a shrill voice called out, "we're here!" I peered around the corner to see a group of impeccably dressed women flooding into our living room. Leading the pack was a statuesque blonde, her diamonds glittering in the afternoon light. "Vivian!" Edna exclaimed, embracing the woman. "So glad you could make it. Ladies, welcome to the Golden Oak Society's newest meeting place." My jaw dropped. This was Edna's small gathering? There had to be at least 20 women, each dripping in designer labels and expensive jewelry. As I scrambled to prepare more refreshments, snippets of conversation drifted my way. Simply must try the new spa at the country club. Thinking of summering in the Hamptons this year? That dreadful charity gala last week? What a bore. My head spun. These weren't the conversations of women concerned about a friend losing her home. These were the idle chatter of the wealthy and privileged. Suddenly, a familiar name caught my ear. "Mildred, dear, that necklace is divine. Is it new?" I froze, my hand halfway to the teapot. "Mildred? Wasn't that the friend Edna said was in dire straits?" Peering around the corner, I spotted an elegantly dressed woman, her neck adorned with a stunning diamond necklace that probably cost more than our mortgage. "Oh, this old thing." Mildred laughed, her voice light and carefree. "Just a little something I picked up in Paris last month." The teacup I was holding slipped from my grasp, shattering on the kitchen floor. The chatter in the living room died down, and I felt all eyes turn towards the kitchen. "Belinda?" Edna called out, her voice sharp. "Is everything all right in there?" I stood frozen, the pieces finally falling into place. The expensive club dues, the constant demands for money, the lavish lifestyle these women led. It had all been a lie. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could continue playing the dutiful daughter-in-law, sacrificing my financial security and self-respect for the sake of keeping the peace. Or I could stand up for myself, expose the truth, and face the consequences. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the living room, my eyes locking with Edna's. The look of panic that flashed across her face told me everything I needed to know. "Ladies," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I think it's time we had a little chat about Mildred's financial situation." The silence in the room was deafening. 20 pairs of eyes bored into me, a mix of confusion and indignation on their perfectly made-up faces. Edna's smile had frozen, a brittle mask that threatened to shatter at any moment. "Belinda, dear," she said, her voice strained. "What on earth are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm talking about the $10,000 I lent you, Edna. The money you said was for Mildred's dire financial situation." Mildred's eyebrows shot up. "My financial situation? I assure you, I'm quite comfortable." "Exactly," I said, my voice gaining strength, "which is why I'm wondering where that money really went." A ripple of whispers swept through the room. Edna's face had gone pale, her eyes darting between me and her friends. "This is hardly the time or place," she began, but I cut her off. "No, I think this is exactly the time and place," I said, my anger finally boiling over. "You've been lying to me, Edna, using me to fund your lavish lifestyle while Marcus and I struggle to make ends meet." The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs. I caught snippets of conversation. "How embarrassing! Poor Edna! What a dreadful scene!" But I kept my eyes fixed on my mother-in-law. Edna's facade crumbled, replaced by a look of cold fury. "How dare you?" she hissed. "After everything I've done for you and Marcus." "Everything you've done," I laughed bitterly. "You mean moving into our house, taking over our lives, and draining our bank account?" Just then, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock. "What's going on here?" "Your wife has lost her mind," Edna snapped, turning to him with tears in her eyes. "She's accusing me of theft in front of all my friends." Marcus looked between us, confusion etched on his face. "Belinda, what are you doing?" I felt a moment of doubt. Was I making a terrible mistake? But then I remembered the mounting bills, the sleepless nights, the constant stress of trying to keep our heads above water. "I'm telling the truth," I said firmly. "Your mother has been lying to us, Marcus. There is no friend in need. She's been using our money to fund her social club and who knows what else." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Mom, is this true?" Edna's expression hardened. Of course not. Your wife is clearly jealous of my social connections. She's always resented me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jealous? Resented? Edna, I've bent over backwards trying to accommodate you. As the argument escalated, I noticed one of Edna's friends slipping out her phone, no doubt capturing the drama for posterity. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. Our dirty laundry was about to become very public. Enough, Marcus shouted, silencing the room. He turned to the gathered women, his face flushed with embarrassment. Ladies, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We clearly have some family matters to discuss. As the women filed out, shooting curious glances over their shoulders, I felt a mix of relief and dread. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? Once we were alone, Marcus rounded on me. What the hell were you thinking, Belinda? Humiliating my mother like that? I stared at him in disbelief. Are you kidding me? Did you not hear a word I said? Edna seized the opportunity, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe you'd choose to believe her over your own mother, Marcus. After everything I've sacrificed for you. I watched as Marcus's resolve wavered, his eyes softening at his mother's distress. In that moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could back down, apologize, and try to salvage this mess. Or I could stand my ground and fight for the truth, even if it meant losing everything. As Marcus moved to comfort his mother, I made my decision. I'd been silent for too long, played the dutiful wife and daughter-in-law at the expense of my own well-being. No more. Marcus, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, I need you to listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to say will change everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the storm I was about to unleash. Marcus, your mother has been lying to us, not just about the money, but about everything. Marcus's face contorted with confusion and anger. What are you talking about? The health issues. The needing to move in with us? It was all a lie, I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the chaos in my head. She's been using our money to fund her lavish lifestyle and her precious Golden Oaks Society. Edna let out an indignant gasp. How dare you? Marcus, don't listen to her. She's clearly lost her mind. But I was beyond caring about Edna's theatrics. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the photos I'd taken earlier that day. Look at these, Marcus. Receipts for spa treatments, designer clothes, first-class tickets to Paris, all charged to our credit card. Marcus's eyes widened as he swiped through the images. This can't be right. Oh, it's right, I said, my voice hardening. And that's not even the worst of it. Remember that $10,000 I lent her for her friend in need? It went straight into the Golden Oaks Society's party fund. Edna's face had gone pale, her usual poise crumbling. I can explain. Save it, I snapped. I've heard enough of your explanations. Marcus looked between us, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. Mom, is this true? Have you been lying to us this whole time? For a moment I thought Edna might confess, but then her eyes hardened and she straightened her spine. Of course not. Your wife is clearly jealous of my social standing. She's trying to turn you against me, Marcus. Can't you see that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even now, faced with irrefutable evidence, she was still trying to manipulate the situation. Jealous? I laughed bitterly. Of what? Your ability to leech off your own son? To destroy our financial stability for the sake of your ego? Marcus held up his hands, looking overwhelmed. Both of you, just stop. I can't think with all this yelling. Fine, I said, my voice tight with suppressed anger. Then let's talk numbers. Marcus, do you have any idea how much debt we're in because of your mother's health issues and friend in need? He shook his head slowly, looking almost afraid to hear the answer. I pulled out a stack of bills from my bag, spreading them across the coffee table. Credit card debt, personal loans, our savings account drained dry. We're looking at over $50,000 in debt, Marcus. And for what? So your mother could play socialite with her rich friends? The color drained from Marcus's face as he stared at the bills. This can't be right. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Edna's lip quivered, but her eyes remained defiant. You don't understand. I had to maintain appearances. The Golden Oaks Society is everything to me. Without it, I'm nothing. The admission hung in the air, heavy and damning. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. So it is true, he whispered. "You've been lying to us this whole time." I felt a momentary pang of sympathy for him, seeing his world crumble. But then I remembered all the sleepless nights, the constant stress, the sacrifices I'd made to keep us afloat. "I want her out," I said, my voice low but firm. "Now." Marcus's head snapped up. "Belinda, we can't just throw her out. She's my mother. And I'm your wife," I shouted, finally losing my composure. "The woman who's been holding this family together while you two played your little games. I'm done, Marcus. It's her or me." The ultimatum hung in the air, charged with years of resentment and betrayal. Marcus looked between us, torn between the woman who raised him and the woman he'd vowed to love and cherish. Edna seized the moment of hesitation. "Marcus, darling, you can't possibly choose her over your own mother. After everything I've done for you." I held my breath, watching Marcus's face. This was it. The moment that would define our future. As he opened his mouth to speak, I steeled myself for whatever came next, knowing that no matter what he said, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that followed my ultimatum was deafening. I watched Marcus, my heart pounding, as he struggled with the impossible choice I'd laid before him. His eyes darted between Edna and me, conflict etched deep in the lines of his face. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't choose between you." My heart sank. Even now, faced with irrefutable evidence of his mother's deceit, he couldn't bring himself to take a stand. Edna seized the moment, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Oh, my poor boy. You shouldn't have to choose. Belinda's just upset. We can work this out as a family." I felt something snap inside me. "Family?" I spat. "Is that what you call this? Lying, manipulating, draining us dry?" Marcus flinched at my tone. "Belinda, please, we're all under a lot of stress. Maybe if we just calm down." "Calm down?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Marcus, we're drowning in debt because of her. How can you still defend her?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "She's my mother, Belinda. I can't just turn my back on her." In that moment, I saw our future unfold with crystal clarity. Years of struggle, of always coming second to Edna's wants and needs, of Marcus never truly standing up for me, for us. "Fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "If that's how you feel, I'll make the choice for you." I walked to our bedroom, no, the guest room now, and pulled out the suitcase I'd hidden in the back of the closet weeks ago. I'd packed it in a moment of desperation, never truly believing I'd use it. Now, I was grateful for my foresight. When I returned to the living room, Marcus's eyes widened in panic. "Belinda, what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago," I replied, my resolve strengthening with each word. "I'm leaving." Edna's triumphant smirk made my blood boil. Now, dear, there's no need for such dramatics. Why don't we all sit down and—" "Save it," I cut her off. "I'm done listening to your lies." I turned to Marcus, fighting back tears. "I love you, Marcus, I always have. But I can't do this anymore. I won't set myself on fire to keep you too warm." He reached for me, his eyes pleading. "Belinda, please, we can figure this out. I'll get another job, we'll pay off the debt." I stepped back, shaking my head. "It's not about the money, Marcus. It's about trust. It's about respect. And you've shown me that I'll never have either from you." With shaking hands, I pulled an envelope from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed them." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Divorce? Belinda, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I deserve better than this, Marcus, and deep down I think you know that." Edna scoffed, her mask of concern slipping. "Well, if that's how you feel, don't let the door hit you on the way out." I turned to her, years of pent-up anger and resentment boiling over. "You know what, Edna? I feel sorry for you. You're so desperate for status and approval that you'd sacrifice your own son's happiness. I hope it was worth it." With that, I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Marcus called out, his voice breaking. "Belinda, wait, please. I love you." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine turning back, of giving him one last chance. But then I thought of all the broken promises, the constant sacrifices, the years of putting everyone else's needs before my own. "I love you too, Marcus," I said softly, not turning around. "But sometimes, love isn't enough." With those final words, I stepped out into the cool night air, closing the door on my old life. As I walked towards an uncertain future, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. For the first time in years, I was free. And despite the challenges ahead, I knew that whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. 6 months after walking out that door, I stood in front of the courthouse, my heart pounding. Today was the final divorce hearing, and I was ready to close this chapter of my life for good. As I climbed the steps, I caught sight of Marcus and Edna, huddled together near the entrance. Marcus looked haggard, his once crisp suits replaced by wrinkled clothes that hung loosely on his frame. Edna, on the other hand, still clung to her designer handbag, though her perfectly coiffed appearance seemed forced, almost desperate. Our eyes met, and for a moment I felt a pang of, not regret, exactly, but a bittersweet acknowledgement of what could have been. Then I straightened my spine and walked past them, head held high. Inside the courtroom, my lawyer, Sarah, greeted me with a reassuring smile. "Ready for this, Belinda?" I nodded, surprising myself with my calm. "More than ready." The proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon and formalities. But when it came time to discuss the financial settlement, the room crackled with tension. "Your Honor," Sarah began, "my client is seeking full repayment of the $10,000 loan made to Mrs. Edna Thompson, as well as half of all marital assets." Marcus's lawyer jumped in, his voice strained. "Your Honor, my client is not in a position to repay such a sum. The loan was a gift made in good faith." "Objection!" Sarah interrupted. "We have evidence proving the deceptive nature of Mrs. Thompson's request for funds." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." As Sarah presented the damning evidence, bank statements, text messages, even photos from the lavish parties funded by my hard-earned money, I watched Marcus and Edna. Their faces crumpled, the weight of their actions finally sinking in. When the judge ruled in my favor, ordering full repayment and a fair division of assets, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about justice, about finally standing up for myself. Outside the courtroom, Marcus approached me, his eyes pleading. "Belinda, I'm so sorry. For everything. I should have listened to you, should have seen what was happening." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a surge of pity. "I'm sorry too, Marcus. I hope you find happiness, I really do." As I turned to leave, Edna called out, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "Belinda, wait! I never meant for things to go this far. I just wanted to feel important," I finished for her. "I understand that, Edna, but not at the expense of others, not at the expense of your own son." Leaving them behind, I walked out into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. My new apartment waited across town, small but all mine. My job at the high school had become a source of joy again, now that I wasn't constantly stressed about money. As I drove home, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, but also the strength I'd found, the friendships I'd forged, the self-respect I'd reclaimed. Entering my apartment, I was greeted by the sight of fresh flowers on the table, a gift from my sister, celebrating my new beginning. I smiled, running my fingers over the soft petals. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Congratulations? Drinks to celebrate?" I typed back a quick "absolutely" before setting the phone down and walking to the window. The city sprawled before me, full of possibilities. For so long I defined myself by my roles: wife, daughter-in-law, caretaker. Now I was just Belinda, and for the first time in years, that felt like more than enough. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead might be uncertain, but I was ready to face it. No more sacrificing my happiness for others. No more dimming my light to make someone else shine. I was free. And in that freedom, I'd found something I thought I'd lost forever: hope. Turning from the window, I caught sight of my reflection. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more resilient than the one who had walked out that door 6 months ago. "Here's to new beginnings," I whispered to myself, raising an imaginary toast to the future. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain: I was ready for it. All of it. And that, more than anything, felt like victory.
My greedy husband and his ruthless mother tied me up and left me in a dark, freezing forest. Their chilling words still haunt me. "This is the end for you.
Goodbye.
Your $100 million business is ours now." Helpless and unable to move, I thought it was over, until an old forest ranger miraculously saved me. But I wasn't just a victim. I returned with a plan they never saw coming, and a shocking revenge that left them speechless. My name is Samantha. I am 28 years old, a businesswoman based in New York City. I have always been ambitious, determined to build a successful career, and I thought my life was finally complete when I married Ethan, the man I believed was my soulmate. Ethan was charming, thoughtful, and supportive, or so I thought. I was drawn to his warm demeanor, and I believed we would build a life full of love and happiness. When we married, I moved into his family home. That's where I met Margaret, his mother. At first, I tried my best to connect with her. Margaret was a sharp, confident woman in her 50s who had raised Ethan as a single mother. I respected her for that and wanted to create a bond, but it quickly became clear that Margaret wasn't interested in any sort of relationship with me. She was controlling, dismissive of my opinions, and, most importantly, obsessed with money. It didn't take long before Margaret started demanding money from me. It began subtly, with small requests for help with groceries or bills. But soon, she insisted that I give her $4,000 every month for her personal expenses. "It's only fair," she said, her tone making it sound like it was my duty as her son's wife. Ethan, to my surprise, supported her completely. "She's done so much for me, Samantha. The least we can do is help her out." I didn't want to cause conflict, so I agreed. At the time, I told myself it was temporary, that she just needed help adjusting after Ethan and I got married. But months turned into years, and I realized Margaret's demands weren't temporary at all. She would call me at work to remind me of the payment due date. If I was late, she would sulk or make snide comments about how I wasn't a real part of the family. Ethan, meanwhile, became more distant. Whenever I brought up Margaret's demands or the stress they were putting on me, he brushed it off. "You're overthinking it," he'd say, as if I were the one being unreasonable. I started noticing little changes in him. He'd stay out late, refuse to discuss his whereabouts, and become defensive whenever I asked questions. The man I had fallen in love with seemed to be slipping away. The breaking point came 2 years into our marriage. One evening, I came home from work earlier than usual and heard voices coming from the living room. Margaret and Ethan were talking, their voices low but clear enough for me to hear. "We'll sell her car," Margaret said. "It's worth enough to cover the buy-in for the game." Ethan hesitated for a moment before replying, "Are you sure she won't notice? Samantha loves that car." "She doesn't have to know," Margaret snapped. "Just tell her it was stolen or something. It's not like she's going to call the cops on her own husband." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. My car, a sleek luxury vehicle I had saved for years to buy, was more than just a possession to me. It was a symbol of my independence, of everything I had worked for. Hearing them plot to sell it without my knowledge shattered something inside me. I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I started paying closer attention. I realized that the money I had been giving Margaret wasn't going toward her expenses at all. She and Ethan were using it to fuel their gambling habits. The realization left me feeling humiliated and betrayed. How could the people I trusted, my husband and his mother, lie to me so easily? Things escalated when I returned from a business trip a few weeks later and found my car missing. "Ethan," I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, "where's my car?" He exchanged a glance with Margaret, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Margaret said, "Oh, it must have been stolen. Such a shame, isn't it?" "Stolen," I repeated, my voice trembling. "Did you even call the police?" Ethan shrugged. "We didn't want to bother you while you were away." I knew they were lying. My hands shook as I demanded answers, and when they refused to admit the truth, I finally snapped. "You sold my car, didn't you?" I shouted. "You're nothing but thieves." Margaret's face twisted with anger. "How dare you speak to us like that?" she spat. "You've been nothing but a burden since the day you moved in." Before I could respond, Ethan grabbed my arm. "That's enough, Samantha," he said, his voice cold and unfamiliar. "You need to calm down." But I couldn't. I was furious, hurt, and terrified all at once. The argument escalated until Ethan and Margaret did something I never thought they were capable of. Together, they overpowered me, tied my hands, and forced me into their car. My screams and pleas went unanswered as they drove me deep into the woods. When they finally stopped, they dragged me out and left me there, alone and terrified, before speeding off into the night. I lay on the cold forest floor, my body aching, my mind racing. How had my life come to this? Was this really the man I had married? And Margaret, how could a mother be so cruel? As I stared up at the dark sky, one thought burned in my mind. I would not let this be the end of my story. This betrayal wouldn't destroy me. It would only make me stronger. I lay in that cold, dark forest for what felt like hours. My wrists were raw from the ropes, and my body ached from being thrown out of the car, like I was nothing. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, and disbelief. How could Ethan and Margaret do this to me? My husband, the man who promised to love and protect me, had left me for dead. I refused to give in to despair. Survival was my only focus. Summoning what strength I had, I managed to loosen the ropes binding my wrists. Once my hands were free, I sat up and scanned my surroundings. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the rustle of leaves and distant animal calls. I had no idea where I was, but I knew I couldn't stay there. After stumbling through the woods for what felt like an eternity, I saw a faint light in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was coming from a small cabin. Relief washed over me, but I was still cautious. I knocked on the door, my hands trembling, and a man answered. He was tall, in his early 40s, with a rugged appearance that suggested he spent most of his time outdoors. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice filled with concern.
I
need help," I said, barely able to get the words out. "They left me in the woods." "Come in," he said immediately, stepping aside to let me enter. "My name's Daniel. I'm a forest ranger. You're safe here." Daniel gave me water and a blanket as I told him what had happened. I didn't go into all the details, just enough for him to understand that my husband and his mother had done this to me. His expression hardened as I spoke. "No one has the right to treat you like that," he said firmly. "You don't deserve this." His kindness brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like someone genuinely cared. Daniel let me stay the night at his cabin, and the next morning, he drove me to a nearby town where I could contact someone I trusted. That person was my younger brother, Michael. Michael and I had always been close, and I knew I could count on him. When I called him and told him what had happened, he was furious. "I'm coming to get you right now," he said, his voice shaking with anger.
Don't worry, Sam.
"We'll fix this." True to his word, Michael arrived within hours and took me back to his apartment in Boston. He didn't bombard me with questions. He just made sure I was comfortable and safe. Over the next few days, as I recounted everything to him, the money Margaret had demanded, the gambling, the missing car, and how they left me in the woods, Michael listened quietly, his jaw clenched. "They're not going to get away with this," he said when I finished. "We're going to make them pay." Michael's words sparked something in me. For too long, I had let Ethan and Margaret control me, manipulate me, and take advantage of my kindness. But now, with Michael by my side, I felt a renewed sense of strength.
It was time to take back my life.
Michael and I started by hiring a private investigator. We needed proof, solid, undeniable evidence of Ethan and Margaret's crimes. The investigator worked quickly, uncovering financial records that showed where my money had gone. It was all there, thousands of dollars spent on gambling, with no trace of the so-called expenses Margaret had claimed. The investigator also found video footage of Ethan and Margaret at various casinos, laughing and drinking as they squandered my hard-earned money. As the evidence piled up, my anger grew. But I knew we couldn't act impulsively. Michael reminded me to be patient, that we needed to have everything in place before confronting them. While the investigator worked, I decided to take matters into my own hands as well. I reached out to people who knew Ethan and Margaret, neighbors, acquaintances, even a few of Ethan's colleagues. Some of them had witnessed their gambling habits firsthand, but had never thought to intervene. One of Ethan's coworkers even admitted that Ethan had borrowed money from him to cover gambling debts. It wasn't just about gathering evidence. It was about building a case strong enough to ensure they couldn't worm their way out of it. I wasn't going to leave any stone unturned. As the weeks passed, I started to feel more like myself again. I was still angry and hurt, but I was channeling those emotions into something productive. Michael was my rock through it all, always there to support me and remind me of why I was fighting. "You deserve better than this, Sam," he would say. "And you're going to get it." The final piece of the puzzle came when the investigator uncovered the sale of my car. The documentation showed that Ethan had signed the paperwork, with Margaret listed as a witness. They had sold it to a private buyer for a fraction of its value, just to get quick cash for a poker game. When I saw the proof, I felt a mix of rage and satisfaction. They had lied to my face, stolen from me, and left me for dead. But now, I had everything I needed to bring them down. It was time to take the next step. Michael and I compiled all the evidence and contacted the police. When we handed over the files, the officer reviewing the case looked stunned.
"This is serious," he said.
"We'll start the investigation immediately." As we left the station, I felt a sense of relief. For the first time in months, I felt like justice was within reach. But I also knew this was just the beginning. Ethan and Margaret had underestimated me, but they were about to learn that I wasn't someone they could betray and walk away from. The day Michael and I filed the police report marked the beginning of a new chapter in my fight. It wasn't just about what Ethan and Margaret had done to me. It was about standing up for myself, reclaiming my dignity, and ensuring they were held accountable. But even with the police now involved, I knew I had to stay strong and see this through. Over the next few weeks, the police conducted their investigation. They reviewed the evidence we had provided, the financial records, the videos of Ethan and Margaret gambling, and the documents proving the sale of my car. They also interviewed people who had witnessed their behavior. Each piece of evidence added weight to the case, making it harder for Ethan and Margaret to deny their actions. One morning, I got a call from the lead detective handling my case. "Samantha," he said, "we're ready to move forward. We have enough evidence to make arrests." Hearing those words sent a wave of relief through me, but it was mixed with anxiety. I couldn't predict how Ethan and Margaret would react when they realized their game was up. Still, I knew this was the only way to finally free myself from their control. The arrests happened quietly. The police waited until Ethan and Margaret were at home before knocking on their door. I wasn't there to see it, but I later learned that Margaret tried to talk her way out of it, claiming there had been some sort of mistake. Ethan, on the other hand, looked shocked and confused, as if he couldn't believe this was happening. The news of their arrests spread quickly, and I started receiving calls from people who had known them. Some expressed disbelief, while others admitted they had always suspected something was wrong. It was strange to hear the sympathy in their voices after everything I had been through, but I appreciated their support nonetheless. Once Ethan and Margaret were in custody, the next step was the trial. Preparing for it was one of the most challenging parts of this journey. My lawyer walked me through the process, explaining what to expect and how to present my side of the story. I had to relive every painful detail, the lies, the theft, and the moment they left me in the forest. It was emotionally exhausting, but I reminded myself that this was necessary to ensure justice. On the day of the trial, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I walked into the courtroom with Michael by my side, feeling his reassuring presence. Ethan and Margaret were already there, sitting with their lawyer. Ethan wouldn't look at me, but Margaret's gaze was cold and defiant, as if she still believed she could manipulate her way out of this. The prosecution presented the evidence we had gathered. The financial records were laid out for the court to see, showing how my money had been drained to fund their gambling habits. The investigators' report detailed the sale of my car, with Ethan's signature as undeniable proof. Video footage of Ethan and Margaret at various casinos played on a screen, their carefree smiles a stark contrast to the pain they had caused me. When it was my turn to testify, I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I took a deep breath and began to speak, telling the court about my experience in my own words. I explained how Margaret had manipulated me into giving her money, how Ethan had supported her every demand, and how their betrayal had escalated to the point of leaving me for dead. "I trusted them," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "I trusted my husband, and I tried to respect his mother. But they saw me as nothing more than a source of money, someone they could use and discard when I was no longer convenient." As I spoke, I saw Ethan shift uncomfortably in his seat. Margaret's expression didn't change, but I could tell she was furious. She had always been confident in her ability to control others, and now she was losing that power. The defense tried to argue that the situation had been exaggerated, that there was no proof they had left me in the forest intentionally. But their arguments fell flat in the face of the overwhelming evidence. Witnesses testified about their gambling habits, and even Ethan's coworker spoke about the money Ethan had borrowed. When the judge announced the verdict, I felt like I was holding my breath. Ethan and Margaret were found guilty on multiple charges, including theft, fraud, and reckless endangerment. The judge didn't hold back in his sentencing, emphasizing the harm they had caused and their lack of remorse. As they were led away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of closure. This wasn't just a victory in the legal sense, it was a personal victory. For too long, I had let their betrayal define me, but now I was free to move forward with my life. Michael hugged me as we left the courtroom. "You did it, Sam," he said. "It's over." I nodded, feeling tears well up in my eyes. It was over. The people who had tried to destroy me were finally being held accountable, and I could start rebuilding my life. The courtroom was silent as the judge's gavel struck, signaling the end of Ethan and Margaret's reign of deceit. Watching them being led away in handcuffs felt surreal. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by fear or manipulation. Justice had been served, and I was finally free. As Michael and I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in years. But it wasn't just relief, it was empowerment. I had fought for myself, stood up to the people who had betrayed me, and emerged stronger. "Are you okay, Sam?" Michael asked as we got into his car. I nodded, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. "I'm more than okay. I feel like I can finally breathe." Over the next few weeks, I began to rebuild my life. With Ethan and Margaret in prison, I no longer had to endure their demands or their lies. But the emotional wounds they left behind would take time to heal. I started therapy to process everything I had been through, and it helped me rediscover parts of myself that I thought I had lost. I realized that their betrayal didn't define me. It was a chapter in my life, but not the whole story. Michael continued to be my biggest supporter. He offered me a place to stay in Boston while I figured out my next steps. I was hesitant at first. I had always been fiercely independent, and relying on others didn't come naturally to me. But Michael reminded me that it was okay to lean on people who truly cared. "Sam, you're not alone in this," he said one evening as we sat in his living room. "You've always been there for me. Let me be here for you now." With his encouragement, I started to feel more confident about the future. I decided to leave New York City behind, along with all the painful memories it held. Boston offered a fresh start, a chance to redefine myself and my goals. One of the first things I did was buy a new car, not as extravagant as the one I had lost, but it symbolized my freedom and independence. Driving it for the first time felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I also threw myself into my work. My business had always been a source of pride, and now it became a source of healing. Pouring my energy into my career helped me regain my sense of purpose and reminded me of my own strength and resilience. I even expanded my network in Boston, connecting with like-minded professionals who inspired me to keep pushing forward. Despite the progress I was making, there were moments when the past still haunted me. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing as I relived the moment Ethan and Margaret left me in the forest. But each time, I reminded myself that I was no longer that helpless woman. I had taken control of my life, and I wasn't going to let their actions hold me back. One day, I received a letter from Ethan. It came from the prison where he was serving his sentence. My hands trembled as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. In the letter, Ethan apologized for everything he had done. He claimed that he had been manipulated by Margaret, that he hadn't realized the extent of the harm he was causing. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. This was the man I had once loved, the man I had believed in. But as I read his words, I realized that his apology didn't change anything. He had made his choices, and those choices had consequences. I didn't owe him forgiveness. I didn't respond to the letter. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. I joined support groups where I connected with others who had experienced betrayal and toxic relationships. Hearing their stories reminded me that I wasn't alone, and it inspired me to share my own journey. I wanted others to know that they, too, could overcome even the darkest of times. As the months passed, I found myself smiling more often. I started going out with friends, exploring Boston, and rediscovering the joys of life. I even began dating again, cautiously, but with an open heart. I wasn't looking for a fairy tale, just someone who would treat me with the kindness and respect I deserved. One evening, Michael and I were sitting on his balcony, watching the city lights. "You've come a long way, Sam," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," I said, clinking my glass with his. "I couldn't have done it without you." As I sat there, surrounded by love and support, I realized how far I had come. The betrayal that had once shattered me no longer defined me. I had reclaimed my life, my independence, and my happiness. Ethan and Margaret's actions had tested me, but they hadn't broken me. This was my story, a story of betrayal, revenge, and triumph. But most importantly, it was a story of resilience and hope. I had learned that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. And now, as I looked out at the world, I was ready for whatever came next.
The crash of shattering glass jolted me from my fitful sleep. I bolted upright, heart pounding, as Martha's shrill voice pierced the air. "Alex! Come quick! I've broken my favorite vase." I groaned, rubbing my eyes as I glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. This was the third time this week my mother-in-law had woken us in the middle of the night. I turned to Alex, expecting to see him stirring, but he was already out of bed, rushing to his mother's aid. "It's okay, Mom." I heard him soothe from down the hall. "We'll get you a new one tomorrow." I sighed, knowing full well who'd be footing the bill for that replacement. As I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my daughter Emily appeared in the doorway, her face etched with worry. "Is everything all right, Mom?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. I forced a smile. "Everything's fine, sweetie. Grandma just had a little accident. Go back to bed." Emily hesitated, then nodded and retreated to her room. I followed her out, determined to assess the damage. As I approached Martha's room, which used to be our guest room, I overheard her conversation with Alex. "Oh, darling, it was such a beautiful piece. Imported from Italy, you know. I simply must have another one just like it." "Of course, Mom," Alex replied, his tone placating. "We'll go shopping first thing in the morning." I stepped into view, arms crossed. "Alex, can I talk to you for a moment?" He looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten I existed. "Becky, honey, can't it wait until morning? Mom's upset." "It's important," I insisted, my jaw clenched. Alex sighed, patting his mother's hand. "I'll be right back, Mom." We stepped into the hallway, and I wasted no time. "Alex, we can't afford to keep replacing everything she breaks. Do you know how much that vase cost?" He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. I know. But what am I supposed to do? She's grieving, Becky. It's only been 6 months since Dad passed." "I understand that," I said, trying to keep my voice low. "But she's burning through our savings. The credit card bills are piling up, and Emily needs new clothes for school." Alex's face hardened. "My mother needs us right now. Emily can make do with what she has for a little longer." I felt my temper flare. "And what about what we need? What about our family?" "Mom is family," he snapped. "Alex?" Martha's voice drifted from the bedroom. "Is everything all right?" "Fine, Mom," he called back, then turned to me. "We'll discuss this later. Go back to bed." As he retreated to Martha's room, I stood there, seething. This wasn't the first time Alex had chosen his mother's comfort over our family's needs, and I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't be the last. I made my way to the kitchen, knowing sleep would elude me now. As I filled the kettle for tea, I noticed a stack of shopping bags in the corner, more of Martha's recent purchases. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked inside one of the bags. My breath caught as I pulled out a designer handbag, the price tag still attached. The cost was more than our monthly grocery budget. "What are you doing?" I whirled around to find Martha standing in the doorway, her eyes narrowed suspiciously. I was just tidying up," I lied, hastily shoving the bag back into place. She sniffed, clearly not believing me. "Well, since you're up, be a dear and make me some chamomile tea. This dreadful accident has left me quite shaken." I bit back a retort, forcing a smile. "Of course, Martha, coming right up." As I prepared her tea, my mind raced. How much longer could we go on like this? Something had to give, and soon. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a storm that would tear our family apart and force me to fight for everything I held dear. I stared at the credit card statement in disbelief, my hands shaking. The balance had nearly doubled since last month, and I knew exactly why. Martha's shopping sprees were spiraling out of control. "Alex, we need to talk," I called out, my voice strained. He sauntered into the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. "What's up, honey?" I thrust the statement at him. "This is what's up. Your mother's spending is out of control. We can't keep living like this." Alex's face hardened as he glanced at the paper. "Come on, Becky. It's not that bad. Mom's just trying to feel better after losing Dad." "Not that bad," I sputtered. "Alex, we're talking thousands of dollars here. On what? Designer clothes? Antiques? Things we don't need and can't afford." He set his mug down with a clank. "What do you want me to do? Tell her she can't buy things. She's grieving, Becky." "It's been 8 months, Alex. Grief doesn't justify financial ruin." Just then, Martha breezed into the kitchen, decked out in what looked like a brand new "Good morning, dears. Alex, be a love and take me shopping today. I simply must have those new throw pillows I saw in the catalog." I watched in horror as Alex nodded without hesitation. Sure, Mom. We'll go after breakfast. Alex, I hissed, but he shot me a warning look. Martha turned to me, her smile sickeningly sweet. Oh, Becky, I almost forgot. I accidentally spilled some wine on that quilt your grandmother made. I'll need you to take it to the cleaners. My blood ran cold. That quilt was a family heirloom, irreplaceable. You what? It's just a quilt, dear, Martha said dismissively. No need to get upset. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Alex quickly intervened. Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of it. As Martha sashayed out of the kitchen, I rounded on Alex. How can you let her treat our things, my family heirlooms, like this? He sighed, rubbing his temples. It was an accident, Becky. Let it go. Let it go? Like I'm supposed to let go of our savings? Our future? Emily's college fund? Alex's eyes flashed. That's enough. I won't have you talking about my mother like this. She's family, and we take care of family. What about our family? I shot back. What about Emily? She needs new clothes for school, but we can't afford them because your mother's buying $500 throw pillows. We'll figure it out, he said dismissively. Now, I need to get ready to take Mom shopping. As he walked away, I felt something inside me snap. I grabbed my phone and dialed my sister's number. Mackenzie? I need to talk. Can we meet for coffee? An hour later, I sat across from my sister in our favorite cafe, pouring out my frustrations. Mackenzie listened intently, her brow furrowed. Becky, this isn't healthy, for any of you. Have you considered counseling? I laughed bitterly. Alex won't hear of it. He thinks everything's fine. And what about you? She asked gently. What do you think? I stared into my coffee, fighting back tears. I think I'm losing my husband and my sanity. Mackenzie reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You need to stand up for yourself, Becky. For Emily, too. This can't go on. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Mom wants to redo the guest room, picking out furniture now. Don't wait up. I showed Mackenzie the message, my hands trembling with anger. Her eyes widened. The guest room? Isn't that where Emily's been sleeping since Martha moved in? I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. What am I going to do, Mac? How did it come to this? Mackenzie's gaze hardened with determination. You're going to fight, sis. It's time to take back control of your life, and I'll be right here to help you do it. As I left the cafe, a mix of fear and resolve churned in my stomach. I knew a storm was coming, and I had to be ready to weather it, for myself and for Emily. I stood in the doorway of Emily's room, my heart sinking as I watched her pack her belongings into cardboard boxes. The hurt in her eyes was palpable, and it tore at my soul. Mom, why do I have to move? Emily asked, her voice cracking. This is my room. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Your father thinks it's best if Grandma has more space. Emily slammed a book into a box. More space? For what? Her stupid antiques? Before I could respond, Alex appeared behind me. What's going on here? I turned to face him, steeling myself. Emily's upset about moving rooms, and frankly, so am I. Alex's jaw tightened. We've been over this, Becky. Mom needs the extra space. For what? I challenged. Her endless shopping sprees? That's enough, Alex snapped. Emily, finish packing. You're moving to the basement today. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. The basement? But it's cold and damp down there. I couldn't hold back any longer. Alex, this is ridiculous. You can't put our daughter in the basement. He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the hallway. I said that's enough. This isn't up for discussion. I yanked my arm free, fury building inside me. Like hell it isn't. This is our daughter we're talking about. Mom's comfort is important too, Alex insisted. More important than Emily's? I shot back. Our raised voices drew Martha from her room. She glided towards us, a look of feigned concern on her face. What's all this fuss about? Alex turned to his mother, his voice softening. It's nothing, Mom. We're just discussing Emily's room change. Martha's eyes lit up. Oh yes, I can't wait to start decorating. I'm thinking of a Parisian theme. It'll be simply divine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Martha, this is Emily's room. She's lived here her entire life. Martha waved her hand dismissively. She's young. She'll adapt. Now, Alex dear, I need you to take me shopping for new curtains. I watched in horror as Alex nodded, completely disregarding the pain he was causing his own daughter. Something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly. Alex and Martha turned to me, shocked. What did you say? Alex demanded. I said no, I repeated, my voice growing stronger. Emily is not moving to the basement. This is her room, and she's staying in it. Martha's face contorted with anger. How dare you speak to me like that in my own home? Your home, I laughed bitterly. This is our home. The home Alex and I built together. The home where we raised our daughter. Alex stepped between us. Becky, you're out of line. Apologize to my mother. I stared at him in disbelief. Apologize? For what? For standing up for our daughter? Emily appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Stop it! Just stop fighting! The sight of my daughter's distress fueled my resolve. I turned to Alex, my voice low and determined. This ends now. Either Martha goes or Emily and I do. A heavy silence fell over the hallway. Alex's face paled as he realized the gravity of the situation. Martha sputtered indignantly, but for once, she seemed at a loss for words. Emily moved to my side, gripping my hand tightly. I squeezed back, drawing strength from her presence. Alex looked between us and his mother, conflict etched across his face. Becky, you can't be serious. You wouldn't leave. I met his gaze steadily. Try me. As we stood there, the air thick with tension, I realized we had reached a turning point. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next would change our family forever. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the storm that was about to break. So, Alex, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, what's it going to be? The tension in our house was suffocating. After my ultimatum, Alex had reluctantly agreed to let Emily keep her room, but the rift between us had only widened. Martha, for her part, had retreated into a sullen silence, punctuated by dramatic sighs and pointed glares in my direction. It was in this strained atmosphere that Alex announced his grand plan to fix everything. We're having a family dinner tonight, he declared over breakfast. Mom's idea. She wants to smooth things over. I eyed him skeptically. And how exactly is dinner supposed to fix this? Alex's smile was strained. Just give it a chance, Becky, please? Against my better judgment, I agreed. That evening, I found myself helping Martha in the kitchen, chopping vegetables while she stirred a pot on the stove. I hope you like bouillabaisse, Martha chirped, her tone overly sweet. It's Alex's favorite. I froze, knife hovering over a carrot. Bouillabaisse? Martha, you know Emily's allergic to shellfish. She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, I'm sure it's not that serious. Besides, she can pick around it. Before I could protest further, Alex walked in. Smells great, Mom. What are we having? Your favorite, dear, Martha beamed. Bouillabaisse. I waited for Alex to object, to remember his daughter's allergy. Instead, he grinned. Perfect. I haven't had that in ages. My blood began to boil. Alex, a word? I pulled him into the hallway, keeping my voice low. Have you forgotten about Emily's allergy? She can't eat that. Alex rolled his eyes. Come on, Becky. It's not like she'll die from it. She can have a salad or something. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Are you serious right now? This is our daughter's health we're talking about. You're overreacting, he snapped. Just let Mom have this, okay? She's trying to make peace. As Alex stormed back to the kitchen, I felt a familiar hand on my shoulder. Emily had overheard everything. It's okay, Mom, she said softly. I'll just eat the bread. My heart broke at the resignation in her voice. No, sweetie, this isn't okay. Dinner was a tense affair. Martha prattled on about her latest shopping finds while Alex nodded along enthusiastically. I pushed food around my plate, my appetite gone. Emily sat silently, nibbling on a piece of bread. Emily, dear, Martha suddenly addressed her. You've hardly touched your food. Don't you like Grandma's cooking? Emily shifted uncomfortably. I can't eat it, Grandma. Remember? I'm allergic to shellfish. Martha's eyes narrowed. Don't be ridiculous. A little seafood never hurt anyone. You're just being picky. Mom, Alex interjected, maybe you could make Emily a sandwich or something? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? Your mother makes a meal our daughter is allergic to, and your solution is to have Emily make her own dinner? Martha huffed. Well, I certainly didn't slave over a hot stove all day to cater to her imaginary allergies. That was the last straw. Emily burst into tears and ran from the table. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Imaginary, I seethed. The last time Emily ate shellfish, she ended up in the hospital. But I guess that was just her imagination too, right? Alex stood as well, his face red with anger. That's enough, Becky. You're ruining dinner. I'm ruining dinner? I laughed bitterly. You two are unbelievable. Your own daughter's health means nothing to you. As I turned to go after Emily, Martha's voice stopped me cold. You know, Alex, I always said you married beneath you, and now look at the ungrateful brats you've raised. The room fell silent. I looked at Alex, waiting for him to defend us, to stand up to his mother at last, but he said nothing. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about tonight's dinner. This was about years of neglect, of choosing his mother over his family. And I was done. I met Alex's gaze, my voice steady. Pack your bags. Emily and I are leaving tonight. As I walked out of the dining room to comfort my daughter and plan our escape, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Our lives were about to change dramatically, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. I sat on Mackenzie's couch, clutching a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. Emily was asleep in the guest room, exhausted from crying. We'd been at my sister's house for 3 days now, and I still felt like I was in a daze. Becky, Mackenzie said gently, you need to decide what you're going to do next. I nodded, my eyes burning with unshed tears. I know. I never thought it would come to this. Mackenzie reached out and squeezed my hand. Alex has called you 12 times. Have you listened to any of his messages? I shook my head. I can't. Not yet. Every time I think about that dinner, about how he just sat there while Martha... My voice broke, and Mackenzie pulled me into a hug. I know, sis, I know. As I pulled away, wiping my eyes, my phone buzzed. Another message from Alex. This time, curiosity got the better of me, and I hit play. Becky, please, Alex's voice crackled through the speaker. Come home. We can work this out. Mom's agreed to move into an apartment nearby. Please just give us another chance. I looked at Mackenzie, my heart racing. He says Martha's moving out. My sister's eyes narrowed. And you believe that? The doubt in her voice mirrored my own. I sighed, deleting the message. No, I don't. Mackenzie nodded, then hesitated. Becky, there's something you need to see. She pulled out her laptop and opened a series of documents. As I scanned them, my blood ran cold. What is this? I whispered. Bank statements, Mackenzie replied. I had a friend look into your finances. Alex has been funneling money into a separate account for months, an account in Martha's name. The room spun as the implications hit me. All those times I'd questioned our dwindling savings, all the excuses Alex had made. He's been lying to me, I said, my voice hollow. All this time he's been... Stealing from you, Mackenzie finished. From Emily's college fund, from your retirement savings, everything. A wave of nausea washed over me. How much? Mackenzie's face was grim. Almost everything, Becky. If you don't act soon, there might not be anything left. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. Anger, betrayal, and fear warred within me. What am I going to do? How can I protect Emily, our future? Mackenzie stood, placing her hands on my shoulders to still my frantic movement. You fight, Becky. You take control. Starting now. She guided me back to the couch and opened another document on her laptop. I've drafted divorce papers. All you have to do is sign. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This was it, the point of no return. If I do this, I said slowly, there's no going back. Why? Mackenzie nodded. No, there isn't. But think about Emily. Think about yourself. You deserve better than this, Becky. Both of you do. As if on cue, Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. Mom, what's going on? I looked at my daughter, seeing the strength and resilience that mirrored my own. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Come here, sweetie, I said, patting the couch beside me. As Emily sat down, I took a deep breath. We need to talk about the future, our future. Emily's eyes widened as she looked at the laptop screen. Are we? I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. Yes, honey. I'm filing for divorce. We're starting over. To my surprise, Emily's face broke into a relieved smile. Good, she said firmly. We don't need them, Mom. We'll be okay on our own. Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged my daughter close. Over her shoulder, I met Mackenzie's gaze and nodded. You're right, I said, reaching for the pen. We will be okay. As I signed my name on the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. Hope for a future free from manipulation and betrayal. Hope for a life where Emily and I could thrive. I closed the laptop, my decision made. Mackenzie, can you call your lawyer friend? It's time to take back our lives. The lawyer's office felt suffocating as I sat across from Alex, the divorce papers between us like a chasm. Mackenzie squeezed my hand under the table, a silent reminder of her support. Emily waited outside, insisting on being here despite my reservations. "You can't be serious about this, Becky," Alex pleaded, his eyes darting between me and the papers. "We can work it out. I'll send Mom to a retirement community, please." I steeled myself against the familiar pull of his words. "It's too late for that, Alex. You've made your choice, time and time again." Our lawyer, Sarah, cleared her throat. "Mr. Drew, we've outlined the division of assets. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Sullivan is entitled to—" "Entitled?" Alex's face contorted with anger. "She's not entitled to anything. It's my money." I felt a surge of righteous fury. "Your money? The money you've been funneling to your mother? The money from our daughter's college fund?" Alex paled, caught off guard. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter," I cut him off. "What matters is that you betrayed us, Alex, me and Emily both." Sarah intervened, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. Drew, given the evidence of financial misconduct, you're facing serious legal consequences. This settlement is more than fair." Alex's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but he shook his head, eyes blazing. "I won't sign. You can't make me." "Then we'll see you in court," Sarah replied coolly. As we stood to leave, the door burst open. Martha stormed in, her face a mask of fury. "You ungrateful witch! How dare you try to ruin my son's life?" Mackenzie stepped between us, but Martha was undeterred. "After everything we've done for you, Alex, don't you dare sign those papers. She doesn't deserve a penny." I watched as Alex's resolve visibly strengthened under his mother's influence. Any hope of an amicable resolution evaporated. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "We'll do this the hard way." As we left the office, Emily rushed to my side. "Mom, what happened?" I hugged her close, my heart breaking at the worry in her eyes. "It's okay, sweetie. We're going to be okay." But as we drove home, the reality of our situation crashed over me. A lengthy court battle would drain what little resources we had left. How would I provide for Emily? How could I fight Alex and Martha's combined resources? At home, I excused myself and retreated to the bathroom, finally allowing the tears to fall. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the uncertainty, the fear, threatened to crush me. A soft knock interrupted my breakdown. "Mom?" Emily's voice called. "Can I come in?" I quickly wiped my eyes and opened the door. Emily took one look at me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "We're going to make it," she said fiercely. "We don't need them. We have each other." Her words, so full of conviction, pierced through my despair. I hugged her back, marveling at her strength. "You're right," I whispered. "We do have each other." As we stood there, I felt a shift inside me. The fear and doubt receded, replaced by a steely determination. Alex and Martha had underestimated me for the last time. I gently pulled away from Emily, meeting her gaze. "Honey, I need you to be strong for a little while longer. Things might get tough, but I promise you, I'm going to fight for us with everything I have." Emily nodded, her jaw set in a determined line that mirrored my own. "I know, Mom, and I'll be right here with you." In that moment, looking at my brave, resilient daughter, I knew I had to win this battle, not just for myself, but for her future, for the life we deserved. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. "Okay," I said, more to myself than to Emily. "Let's show them what we're made of." As we walked out of the bathroom together, I felt a newfound resolve coursing through me. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready to fight, ready to reclaim our lives, and ready to build a future free from Alex and Martha's toxic influence. The real battle was just beginning, and I was prepared to give it everything I had. The moving truck rumbled to life outside our house. No, Alex's house now. I stood in the barren living room, surrounded by empty spaces where our life together once resided. Emily appeared at my side, her face a mix of determination and apprehension. "Is this really happening, Mom?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I squeezed her hand. "Yes, sweetie, it's time." As if on cue, the front door burst open. Alex stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I steeled myself, meeting his gaze. "We're leaving, Alex, for good." His eyes darted around the room, taking in the bare walls and empty spaces. "You can't just take everything. This is my house." "Your house?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything I'm taking, I bought with my own money. Money you didn't manage to funnel into your mother's account. Alex's face paled. You don't understand. Mom needed. Save it. I cut him off. We're done here. As we moved towards the door, Martha appeared, her eyes widening at the sight of the empty house. What have you done, you spiteful witch? I felt Emily tense beside me, but I stood my ground. I'm taking back what's rightfully ours, Martha. You've taken enough from us. Martha's face twisted with fury. She lunged forward, grabbing a vase, one of the few items left, and hurled it at us. I pushed Emily out of the way, feeling the sting as shards of ceramic sliced my arm. Mom, Emily cried out. That's assault! Mackenzie's voice rang out. She stood in the doorway, phone in hand, recording everything. It's all on video, Martha. Back off. Alex grabbed his mother's arm, finally seeming to realize the gravity of the situation. Mom, stop. This isn't helping. I clutched my bleeding arm, adrenaline coursing through me. We're leaving now. Our lawyer will be in touch. As we walked out, I heard Martha's shrill voice. You'll regret this, Rebecca. We'll destroy you in court. The drive to our new apartment was tense. Emily kept glancing at my arm, worry etched on her face. Are you okay, Mom? I managed to smile. I'm fine, sweetie. It's just a scratch. But inside I was trembling. Martha's threat echoed in my mind. Could they really destroy us in court? I thought of the meager savings we had left, the uncertain future ahead. At the new apartment, reality hit hard. Our furniture looked shabby in the harsh light of the empty rooms. Emily's face fell as she surveyed her tiny bedroom. It's cozy, she said, trying to sound upbeat. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I'm so sorry, Emily. I know this isn't what you're used to. She turned to me, her eyes fierce. Don't apologize, Mom. We're free now. That's what matters. As we unpacked, my phone buzzed incessantly. Texts from Alex, voicemails from Martha, emails from their lawyer. Each notification felt like a blow, chipping away at my resolve. Late that night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat on our second-hand couch, overwhelmed by the enormity of what we'd done. The apartment felt alien, a far cry from the home we'd left behind. Doubt crept in, insidious and persistent. Had I made a terrible mistake? Could I really provide for Emily on my own? What if Martha was right, and they did destroy us in court? I buried my face in my hands, tears flowing freely. The weight of our uncertain future pressed down on me, threatening to crush my spirit. A soft touch on my shoulders startled me. Emily stood there, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Mom, are you okay? I tried to wipe away my tears to be strong for her, but I couldn't stop the sobs that racked my body. Emily sat beside me, wrapping her arms around me. It's okay, Mom, she whispered. We're going to be okay. As I clung to my daughter, I realized the true magnitude of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about surviving a divorce or standing up to Martha. This was about rebuilding our entire lives from the ground up. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles and financial struggles. But looking at Emily, seeing her strength and resilience, I knew one thing for certain. We would face it together, no matter what came our way. I stood outside the courthouse, my heart pounding. Today was the final hearing in our divorce case. Emily squeezed my hand, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of emotions swirling within me. You've got this, Mom, she whispered. As we walked in, I caught sight of Alex and Martha. They looked haggard, a far cry from the polished, entitled pair they'd been months ago. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of regret in Alex's gaze. But then Martha whispered something in his ear, and his face hardened once more. The hearing was a blur of legal jargon and tense exchanges. Our lawyer presented evidence of Alex's financial misconduct, of Martha's lavish spending at our expense. I watched as the judge's expression grew increasingly stern. When it was my turn to speak, I stood on shaky legs, but as I began to recount our story, the years of manipulation, the disregard for Emily's well-being, the betrayal of our family's future, I felt a strength I didn't know I possessed surge through me. Your Honor, I concluded, my voice steady, I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for justice, for a chance to rebuild the life that was stolen from us. The judge's verdict came swiftly. In light of the evidence, she ruled heavily in our favor. Alex was ordered to repay the money he'd funneled to Martha, and a significant portion of our assets were awarded to me and Emily. As the gavel fell, I heard Martha's indignant shriek, "This is outrageous! We'll appeal!" But Alex's shoulders slumped in defeat. Our eyes met across the courtroom, And in that moment, I saw the man I'd once loved, the man who'd been lost to his mother's influence. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of the justice served. Outside the courthouse, Emily hugged me fiercely. "We did it, Mom. We really did it." Mackenzie joined our embrace, tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you both," she said. As we celebrated that night in our small apartment, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would still be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt hope for our future. Months passed, and slowly we rebuilt our lives. I threw myself into my work, earning a promotion that allowed us to move to a better apartment. Emily thrived in her new school, her confidence growing day by day. One afternoon, as I helped Emily prepare for her high school entrance exam, she paused, her expression serious. "Mom," she said softly, "I want you to know, I'm proud of you, for standing up to Dad and Grandma, for fighting for us. You're the strongest person I know." Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged her close. "Oh, sweetie, you're the one who gave me strength. We did this together." The day Emily's acceptance letter to the prestigious private high school arrived, we danced around the kitchen, laughing and crying in equal measure. As we collapsed on the couch, breathless with joy, I marveled at how far we'd come. "We made it, Em," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Look at everything we've accomplished." Emily smiled, her eyes shining. "We did, Mom, and it's just the beginning." That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on our journey. The pain, the fear, the uncertainty, it had all led us here to this moment of triumph. We'd faced down the storm and emerged stronger, our bond unbreakable. I thought of Alex and Martha, wondering if they'd found peace in the aftermath of our battle. Part of me hoped they had, that they'd learned from their mistakes. But a larger part of me realized it didn't matter anymore. We'd moved on, creating a life filled with love, respect, and mutual support. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. For my daughter's resilience, for my sister's unwavering support, for the strength I'd discovered within myself. We'd weathered the storm, and now, finally, we were home. Our story wasn't one of revenge, but of reclamation. We'd reclaimed our dignity, our future, and most importantly, our right to happiness. And as I closed my eyes, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger than ever before. The attic was suffocating, its musty air thick with secrets. I wiped sweat from my brow, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid of an old trunk. Nestled among yellowed newspapers and faded photographs, a bundle of letters caught my eye. The handwriting was unfamiliar, delicate yet urgent. "Rachel, are you still up there?" Dominic's voice floated up from below. I hesitated, my fingers grazing the frayed edges of the envelopes. "Just a minute," I called back, my heart racing. Quickly, I stuffed the letters into my pocket and closed the trunk. As I descended the rickety ladder, Dominic appeared at the bottom, his brow furrowed. "What were you doing up there?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his tone. I forced a smile. "Just looking for some old baby clothes. Thought we might be able to use them for Grace." Dominic's face softened. "Oh, right. Good idea." He glanced at his watch. "The boys will be home soon. I need to head out for a bit. Can you handle dinner?" I nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Of course. Go ahead." As soon as the front door closed behind him, I rushed to the kitchen and pulled out the letters with shaking hands. The return address bore the name Sarah Harper, Dominic's late wife. The first letter was dated 5 years ago, just months before Sarah's death. I began to read, my breath catching in my throat. "Dear Lucy and Ian, I'm writing to you in desperation. Things have gotten worse, and I fear for the boys' safety. Dominic's temper is out of control, and his parents enable his behavior. Please, I need your help." The sound of the front door opening startled me. I quickly shoved the letters back into my pocket as Ethan, my 15-year-old stepson, walked into the kitchen. "Hey," he mumbled, barely making eye contact. "Hi, Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How was school?" He shrugged, heading for the fridge. "Fine." I watched him, my mind reeling from what I'd just read. Was it possible? Had Dominic been abusive to Sarah? To the boys? "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked, breaking into my thoughts. "He had to run out for a bit," I replied. "He'll be back for dinner." Ethan nodded, then paused, studying my face. "Are you okay? You look kind of pale." I forced another smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired. Pregnancy, you know." His eyes flickered to my swollen belly, then back to my face. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of concern in his usually guarded expression. The front door opened again, and 12-year-old Max bounded in, all energy and smiles. "Rachel, can we have pizza for dinner?" I laughed, grateful for the distraction. "Not tonight, buddy. How about spaghetti?" As I busied myself with dinner preparations, my mind raced. What other secrets did those letters hold? And what was I going to do with this information? The sound of a car in the driveway made my stomach clench. Dominic was home. I heard his parents' voices as well. Beverly and Carl must have come for dinner. "Rachel?" Beverly's shrill voice called out. "Where are you hiding?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the evening ahead. As I turned to greet them, my hand unconsciously went to my pocket, feeling the weight of Sarah's letters against my hip. "In the kitchen!" I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. Whatever these letters revealed, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing in this family would ever be the same again. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my hands resting on my swollen belly. 6 months pregnant, and I still couldn't believe it. A mix of joy and anxiety swirled inside me, much like the baby kicking beneath my palms. "Rachel?" Max's voice called from the hallway. "Can I come in?" I opened the door to find my younger stepson, his face bright with excitement. "Look what I made in art class," he thrust a clay figurine towards me. "It's beautiful, Max," I said, admiring the misshapen but lovingly crafted sculpture. "Is it for the baby?" He nodded eagerly. "Do you think she'll like it?" "She'll love it," I assured him, ruffling his hair. Max's acceptance had been a balm to my soul these past months, a stark contrast to Ethan's cold shoulder. As if summoned by my thoughts, Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of indifference. "Dad wants to know if dinner's ready," I sighed, glancing at my watch. "I'll be down in a minute. Can you set the table, please?" Ethan shrugged and turned away without a word. Max gave me an apologetic look before scampering after his brother. Downstairs, I found Dominic in his study, buried in paperwork. "Honey," I said, knocking gently on the open door. "Dinner's almost ready." He looked up, distracted. "Oh, right. I'll be there in a sec." I hesitated, then plunged ahead. I was thinking, maybe we could tell the boys about the baby tonight? Dominic's brow furrowed. "Are you sure that's a good idea? Ethan's still adjusting to everything." "It's been over a year, Dominic," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "And I'm showing. We can't keep it a secret much longer." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine, we'll tell them after dinner." The meal was a tense affair, with Ethan pushing food around his plate and Max trying to fill the silence with chatter about school. As we cleared the dishes, Dominic cleared his throat. "Boys, Rachel and I have some news," he began. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Max looked between us, curiosity written across his face. "We're going to have a baby," I said, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. "You're going to have a little sister." Max's face lit up. "Really? That's awesome." He jumped up to hug me, nearly knocking me off balance. Ethan, however, remained stone-faced. "Congratulations," he said flatly, pushing back from the table. "May I be excused?" "Ethan, wait," Dominic called, but the boy was already halfway up the stairs. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. "I'll go talk to him," I said, but Dominic shook his head. "Let him cool off. I'll handle it later." But later never seemed to come with Dominic. As the weeks passed, the tension in the house grew thicker. Ethan retreated further into himself, while Max's excitement about the baby only seemed to widen the rift between the brothers. One afternoon, I found myself alone in the house, the weight of Sarah's letters heavy in my mind. I hadn't dared read more since that first day, but now, with silence pressing in around me, I couldn't resist. I retrieved the bundle from its hiding place and began to read. Sarah's words painted a picture of a family in crisis. Dominic's temper, his parents' interference, her growing fear for her children's well-being. Tears streamed down my face as I read the final letter, dated just days before Sarah's death. "If anything happens to me," she wrote, "please, Lucy and Ian, take care of my boys. Don't let them forget that they're loved." The sound of the front door slamming jolted me back to reality. I quickly hid the letters as Ethan stormed into the kitchen. "Ethan?" I called, my voice shaky. "Is everything okay?" He whirled to face me, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and pain I'd never seen before. "Why do you care?" he spat. "You're not my mother. You're just the woman who's trying to replace her." His words hit me like a physical blow. As he stormed upstairs, I sank into a chair, one hand on my belly, the other clutching Sarah's letters. In that moment, I realized that the family I'd thought I was joining was built on a foundation of secrets and pain, and I was caught right in the middle of it all. The doorbell chimed, and my heart sank. Beverly and Carl were early as usual. I smoothed my dress over my 8-month belly and plastered on a smile. "Rachel, darling!" Beverly's saccharine voice grated on my nerves as she swept into the house. "My, you're looking robust." I bit back a retort. "Hello, Beverly. Carl, please, come in." Carl grunted, eyeing me critically. "Where's Dominic?" "Still at work," I replied, leading them to the living room. "He should be home soon." Beverly sked. "Working so late with a baby on the way? I hope you're not putting too much pressure on him, Rachel." I clenched my jaw. "Dominic makes his own choices." "Of course he does," Beverly said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Now, where are my grandsons?" As if on cue, Max bounded down the stairs. "Grandma! Grandpa!" He hugged them both, then turned to me. "Rachel, can I show them the nursery?" Before I could answer, Beverly interjected. "Oh, you've been helping with the nursery? How sweet." I'm sure Rachel appreciates any help she can get, being so inexperienced. I saw Max's face fall slightly. "Actually," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm, "Max has been a huge help. He's got quite an eye for design." Beverly's lips thinned. "Well, isn't that lovely? Carl, why don't you go with Max? I'd like to have a little chat with Rachel." My stomach clenched as Carl and Max headed upstairs. Beverly turned to me, her eyes cold. "Rachel, dear, we need to discuss your influence on this family." I steeled myself. "What do you mean, Beverly?" "Well," she began, her voice sickly sweet, "we've noticed some changes since you arrived. Ethan's become so withdrawn, and now Max is playing interior decorator. It's just not natural." "Not natural?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. "Dominic tells us you're encouraging the boys to express themselves," she continued. "That's not how we raised Dominic. Men in this family are strong, not emotional." I felt my temper rising. "And look how well that turned out," I snapped before I could stop myself. Beverly's eyes widened. "I beg your pardon?" The front door opened, saving me from having to respond. Dominic walked in, looking tired. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. Beverly's demeanor changed instantly. "Oh, honey, we just came to check on you all. We're worried about the stress you're under." Dominic's brow furrowed. "What stress?" Beverly glanced pointedly at my belly. "Well, with the baby coming and Rachel clearly struggling to manage the household." "I'm not struggling," I interjected, but Dominic was already nodding. "It has been tough," he admitted, "but we're managing." I stared at him, hurt and anger warring inside me. "Dominic, can I speak with you in the kitchen?" Once alone, I rounded on him. "Why didn't you tell me your parents were coming?" He shrugged. "I forgot. What's the big deal?" "The big deal," I hissed, "is that your mother just spent the last 10 minutes criticizing everything about our life." Dominic sighed. "Rachel, you're overreacting. That's just how Mom is. And you just let her talk to me like that?" I felt tears pricking at my eyes. "Look," he said, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. "My parents are important to me. If you can't handle them, maybe you need to try harder." I stepped back, shocked. "Try harder? Dominic, I've been trying since the day I moved in. But your parents hate me. Ethan can barely look at me, and you don't even see what's happening." "What's happening," he growled, "is that you're turning my family against me." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I opened my mouth to respond, but a sharp pain in my abdomen made me gasp instead. Dominic's anger morphed into concern. "Rachel, what's wrong?" I clutched my belly, panic rising. I think the baby's coming." As Dominic rushed to call the hospital, I leaned against the counter, breathing heavily. Through the haze of pain, one thought crystallized in my mind. Something had to change, and soon. For my sake, for the boys' sake, and now, for my daughter's sake, too. The shrill cry of Grace pierced the early morning silence, jolting me awake. I stumbled out of bed, exhaustion weighing heavily on my bones. It had been 3 months since her dramatic arrival, and I felt like I hadn't slept since. As I cradled Grace, trying to soothe her, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair a mess, and clothes that hadn't been changed in days. I barely recognized myself. "Rachel?" Dominic's voice called from downstairs. "My parents are here. Can you come down?" I froze, panic rising in my chest. Beverly and Carl were here? Now? I looked down at Grace, finally quiet, then back at my disheveled reflection. There was no time to make myself presentable. Descending the stairs, I could hear Beverly's voice, sharp and critical. Really, Dominic, the house is a mess. I thought Rachel was supposed to be taking care of things. I stepped into the living room, Grace in my arms. Good morning, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Beverly's eyes widened as she took in my appearance. Oh my, she said, her tone dripping with disdain. Rachel, dear, you look, well, I suppose new motherhood isn't easy for everyone. I felt my cheeks burn with shame and anger. I'm doing my best, I said through gritted teeth. Carl grunted. Doesn't look like much of a best to me. I looked to Dominic, silently pleading for support, but he avoided my gaze. Mom, Dad, why don't we go out for breakfast? He suggested. Give Rachel some time to get things in order. The implication stung. As they left, I sank onto the couch, tears threatening to spill over. Grace began to fuss again, and I felt utterly overwhelmed. Suddenly, Ethan appeared in the doorway. His eyes darted between me and the baby, a mix of concern and uncertainty on his face. Are you okay? He asked hesitantly. I tried to smile, but it felt more like a grimace. I'm fine, Ethan, just tired. He shifted uncomfortably. I could hold her for a bit, if you want to shower or something. His offer caught me off guard. You'd do that? Ethan shrugged. Yeah, I guess. I mean, she is my sister. Gratitude washed over me as I carefully transferred Grace to Ethan's arms. As I headed upstairs, I heard him talking softly to her, and for a moment, hope flickered in my chest. But reality came crashing back when I returned to find Dominic and his parents had returned. Beverly was holding Grace, cooing at her while shooting pointed looks in my direction. There you are, Rachel, she said. We were just discussing how you might need some help. Perhaps a nanny? I bristled. We don't need a nanny. I can take care of my own child. Beverly's smile was cold. Of course, dear, but with the house in such a state and you looking so worn out, we're just concerned. We? I looked at Dominic, who shifted uncomfortably. Rachel, he began, his tone placating, maybe Mom has a point. You have been struggling lately. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Struggling, Dominic, I've been doing everything, taking care of Grace, the boys, the house, while I what? Dominic's voice took on a dangerous edge. While I worked to support this family? The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Even Beverly looked taken aback by Dominic's tone. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I thought of Sarah's letters, hidden away. I thought of Ethan's small act of kindness, and I thought of my daughter, who deserved better than this toxic environment. You know what? I said, my voice low and steady. You're right. I do need help, but not from a nanny, and certainly not from you. I turned to Ethan, who was watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Ethan, can you take Grace upstairs, please? As Ethan left with the baby, I faced Dominic and his parents. This ends now, I declared. I'm done being the scapegoat for this family's problems. Either things change, or I'm leaving, and I'm taking my daughter with me. The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if I wasn't trembling inside. But as I stood there, chin held high, I knew I had reached a turning point. Whatever came next, I was ready to fight for myself and my children. All of them. The fluorescent lights of the office buzzed overhead, matching the constant thrum of anxiety in my chest. I stared at the computer screen, the words blurring before my eyes. My head pounded, a dull ache that had become my constant companion. Rachel? My colleague Sarah peered over the cubicle wall. Are you okay? You look pale. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just a bit tired. Grace had a rough night. Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. You've been just tired for weeks now. Maybe you should see a doctor? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. Mom and Dad coming for dinner. Don't forget to pick up Grace from daycare. My stomach churned. Another evening of criticism and tension. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Rachel? Sarah's voice seemed distant. Rachel, you're shaking. I opened my eyes to find the room spinning. Suddenly, the floor rushed up to meet me. I came to on a couch in the break room, surrounded by concerned faces. Our HR manager, Linda, knelt beside me. Rachel, we've called an ambulance. You fainted, she explained gently. Panic surged through me. No, I can't go to the hospital. I have to pick up Grace and dinner. Your health comes first, Linda insisted. We've contacted your husband. He's on his way to the hospital. The next few hours passed in a blur of tests and questions. When the doctor finally entered my room, his expression was grave. "Mrs. Harper, your blood pressure is dangerously high. You're showing signs of severe stress and exhaustion. If you don't make some significant changes, you're at risk for serious complications." I nodded numbly, barely registering his words. All I could think about was Grace and the boys and the mountain of tasks waiting for me at home. The door burst open and Dominic rushed in, followed closely by Beverly and Carl. My heart sank at the sight of them. "Rachel, what happened?" Dominic demanded. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Before I could answer, Beverly chimed in. "I knew she couldn't handle it all. Dominic, this is what happens when you let a career woman try to run a household." Anger flared within me, cutting through the fog of exhaustion. "Excuse me?" Carl grunted. "Face it, girl, you bit off more than you could chew. It's time to admit you need help." I looked to Dominic, silently pleading for support, but he avoided my gaze. "Maybe they're right, Rachel. You're clearly overwhelmed." Something inside me snapped. "Overwhelmed? Of course I'm overwhelmed. I'm working full-time, taking care of an infant and 2 teenagers, managing a household, and dealing with constant criticism from your parents. And where have you been, Dominic? Where's your support?" The room fell silent. Dominic's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "That's not fair, Rachel. I work hard to provide for this family." "And I don't?" I shot back. "When was the last time you got up for a 3 a.m. feeding, or helped with homework, or stood up to your parents when they belittle me?" Beverly gasped. "How dare you speak to him like that? After everything we've done for you." "Enough!" I shouted, surprising even myself. "I'm done. I'm done trying to please everyone while sacrificing my own health and happiness." I turned to Dominic, my voice shaking but resolute. "Things need to change, Dominic. Either we get counseling and you start setting boundaries with your parents, or what?" Dominic's voice was dangerously low. I took a deep breath, the weight of my next words hanging in the air. "Or I'm leaving, and I'm taking Grace with me." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. In that moment, staring into Dominic's shocked face, I knew there was no going back. Whatever came next, I had to prioritize my health and my children's well-being. The time for compromise was over. Now, it was time to fight. I stood in the kitchen, mechanically stirring a pot of soup, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The house was eerily quiet. Dominic had taken Grace to his parents for the day, a thinly veiled attempt to give me a break after my hospital scare. But the silence only amplified my inner turmoil. A soft knock on the doorframe startled me. I turned to see Ethan hovering uncertainly in the doorway. "Rachel?" His voice was hesitant. "Can we talk?" I nodded, surprised. "Of course. Come in." Ethan sat at the kitchen table, fidgeting with a folded piece of paper. I found something in Dad's study." My heart raced as he unfolded the paper. It was a letter, the handwriting achingly familiar, Sarah's handwriting. "It's from my mom," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "She wrote it right before she died. I think you should read it." With trembling hands, I took the letter. As I read, Sarah's words burned into my mind. "Dominic, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I can't take it anymore. The anger, the control, the fear. I'm leaving, and I'm taking the boys with me. Your parents have poisoned our family for too long. I won't let them do to our children what they did to you. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. Please find help, break the cycle, for our boys' sake." I looked up at Ethan, tears blurring my vision. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. She never got to leave. The accident, it wasn't an accident, was it?" The weight of this revelation crashed over me. Suddenly everything, Dominic's temper, his parents' interference, the boys' pain, clicked into horrifying focus. "Ethan," I said, my voice shaking, "I need you to listen to me. What's happening in this family isn't right. It wasn't right for your mother, and it's not right for us now." Ethan nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know, I've known for a while. I didn't know what to do." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I'm going to leave your father, and I want to take you, Max, and Grace with me." Ethan's eyes widened. "You do that? Even for us?" "Of course," I said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "You're my family too, Ethan. All of you." Just then we heard the front door open. Dominic's voice called out, "Rachel, we're home." Panic flashed across Ethan's face. I quickly folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. "It's okay," I whispered. "We'll figure this out." Dominic appeared in the doorway, Grace in his arms. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him. "What's going on here?" I stood up, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "Dominic, we need to talk about everything." His face darkened. "Everything? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "that I know about Sarah, about what really happened, and I'm not going to let history repeat itself." The color drained from Dominic's face. He set Grace down, his movements suddenly jerky and aggressive. "You don't know anything," he snarled. "I know enough," I shot back. "And I'm done pretending. This ends now, Dominic, for all our sakes." Ethan stood up, moving to stand beside me. "She's right, Dad. We can't keep living like this." Dominic's eyes darted between us, a cornered animal. "You're turning my own son against me?" he growled, taking a step forward. I instinctively pushed Ethan behind me, shielding him. "No, Dominic. You did that all on your own." As Dominic advanced, rage contorting his features, I realized with crystal clarity that this was the moment everything would change. There was no going back now. Whatever came next, I had to be ready to fight. Not just for myself, but for all 4 children who were counting on me. With one hand reaching for Grace and the other holding Ethan's arm, I braced myself for the storm that was about to break. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. "I want a divorce, Dominic." His face contorted with rage, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "You what?" I stood my ground, heart racing but voice steady. "You heard me. I'm leaving, and I'm taking the children with me." Dominic's laugh was cold, mirthless. "You think you can just walk away? Take my kids?" "Our kids," I corrected. "And yes, I can. I will." His eyes darted to Ethan, who stood beside me, then to Max, who had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "Boys," Dominic said, his voice dangerously calm, "go to your rooms, now." Neither moved. Max spoke up, his voice trembling but determined. "No, Dad. We're staying with Rachel." Dominic's facade cracked. "What did you say to them?" He snarled at me. "How dare you turn my own children against me?" "We made our own choice," Ethan said. "We know what you did to Mom, what you've been doing to all of us." The color drained from Dominic's face. "You don't know anything," he hissed. "We know enough," I said, pulling Sarah's letter from my pocket. "And so will the police if you try to stop us." Dominic lunged forward, but Ethan stepped between us. "Don't touch her," he warned. For a moment, I saw a flicker of shock in Dominic's eyes, as if truly seeing his son for the first time. Then his expression hardened. "Fine," he spat. "Leave, but don't think this is over." As we hurried to pack essentials, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Lucy Miller. We need to talk." My heart skipped a beat. Ethan and Max's maternal grandparents, the ones Dominic had kept away for years. I quickly replied, arranging to meet them. Hours later, we sat in a quiet cafe, the boys reuniting tearfully with their grandparents. Lucy clutched my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "We've been trying to reach them for so long." Ian's face was grim. "We always suspected something was wrong, but Dominic kept us away, said we were a bad influence." "He was the bad influence," Max said bitterly. "Him and his parents." A chill ran down my spine. "His parents," I repeated. "Oh God, Beverly and Carl, they'll be furious when they find out." As if on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Beverly, threatening texts from Carl, and a voicemail from Dominic that made my blood run cold. "You think you've won?" His voice slurred, clearly drunk. "This isn't over. I'll take everything from you. The kids, the house, everything. You'll regret the day you crossed me, Rachel." I looked up at the concerned faces around me. "We need to go," I said urgently. "It's not safe here anymore." Lucy squeezed my hand. "Come stay with us. We have plenty of room and Dominic doesn't know where we live." As we drove to Lucy and Ian's house, my mind raced. How had it come to this? Running from the man I once loved with 4 children depending on me? Ethan's voice broke into my thoughts. "Rachel, are we going to be okay?" I met his eyes in the rearview mirror, seeing the fear and hope battling there. I thought of Sarah's letter, of the years of abuse and manipulation, of the strength it took to break free. "Yes," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "We're going to be okay. It won't be easy, but we're together now, and we're going to fight for the life we deserve." As we pulled up to Lucy and Ian's house, I saw Beverly and Carl's car parked across the street. My heart plummeted. How had they found us so quickly? Stay in the car? I told the children, my voice tight with fear. Lock the doors, I'll handle this. As I stepped out to face my in-laws, I knew this was it, the moment that would define our future. Everything was at stake, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. I stood on the porch, my heart pounding as Beverly and Carl approached. Behind me, I could hear Lucy and Ian ushering the children inside. Where do you think you're going with our grandchildren? Beverly's shrill voice cut through the air. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. They're safe, Beverly. That's all that matters. Carl's face reddened. You have no right to take them, Dominic. Dominic lost that right, I interrupted, my voice steady. And so did you. Just then, a car screeched to a halt behind them. Dominic stumbled out, his eyes wild with rage. You, he snarled, pointing at me. You've ruined everything. As he lurched towards me, Ethan burst out of the house, placing himself between us. Stop right there, Dad, he warned. Dominic froze, shock momentarily replacing anger. Ethan, what are you doing? Protecting my family, Ethan replied, his voice trembling but resolute. The way you never did. Beverly gasped. How dare you speak to your father that way? No, I said, stepping forward. How dare you all treat these children like possessions instead of people? How dare you continue the cycle of abuse that nearly destroyed Sarah? Carl's face paled. What are you talking about? I pulled out Sarah's letter, my hand shaking. I know everything. About Sarah's plan to leave, about the accident that wasn't an accident, and so do the police. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dominic's face contorted with fury and fear. You bitch, he spat. You'll pay for this. He lunged forward, but Ethan was quicker. In a move that spoke of years of pent-up anger, he shoved his father back. Dominic stumbled, falling hard on the pavement. As the police cars pulled up, everything seemed to move in slow motion. Officers swarmed around us, separating Dominic and his parents from the rest of us. I watched as they were handcuffed and read their rights, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Max appeared at my side, slipping his hand into mine. Is it over? He asked, his voice small. I squeezed his hand. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. Hours later, after statements had been given and plans set in motion, we sat in Lucy and Ian's living room. Grace slept peacefully in my arms, while Ethan and Max leaned against me on either side. What happens now? Ethan asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I looked around at the faces of our newfound family, Lucy and Ian, beaming with joy at being reunited with their grandsons, the boys, finally free from the weight of secrets and fear, and little Grace, innocent and unaware of the seismic shift in our world. Now, I said, my voice thick with emotion, we heal, we build a new life, one filled with love and honesty and support. Lucy reached out, squeezing my hand. You're not alone in this, Rachel. We're all here for you and the children. I felt tears welling up, but for the first time in years they were tears of relief and hope. Thank you, I whispered. All of you, for being brave, for standing up for what's right. As the evening wore on, plans were made. Lucy and Ian offered us a place to stay until we could get back on our feet. We talked about therapy, about legal proceedings, about rebuilding our lives. Later that night, as I tucked the children into bed, Ethan caught my hand. Rachel, he said softly, I'm sorry I was so hard on you before. You saved us, just like Mom tried to do. I felt my heart swell with love and pride. Oh, Ethan, I said, pulling him into a hug. You saved us too. We all did together. As I closed their bedroom door, I paused in the hallway, overwhelmed by the events of the day. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt hope blooming in my chest. We had broken free from the cycle of abuse and silence. We had chosen love over fear, truth over lies, and in doing so, we had found not just safety, but a true family, one built on trust, respect, and unconditional love. As I settled into bed, exhausted but at peace, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our journey of healing had only just begun, but we were finally on the right path, and that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.